Good morning, everybody. The one thing I want to say is I am trying not to repeat myself and do the Hydrangea or any of the classes over and over the same class. And I also wanted to say what Shannon said was true. I am trying to give you the information based on my experience. I'm not saying that the old-fashioned is great or not, or it doesn't work, because it worked for some people, but I have seen few issues, and so I wanted to just give you my tips in how do I take care of the garden, in this case hydrangeas. So I'm gonna start with the general idea. We have 6 species of hydrangeas here. These are the most common ones in the US. I'm not gonna give you details of what they need, or because you can find that anywhere in the nursery's website, in the internet, everything. But I'm gonna give you, again, tips of what I see. So the hydrangea that I guess I'm gonna start with, I have been really amazed in how drought tolerant hydrangeas are compared with other plants. Since we had to reduce the water, I still have hydrangeas producing flowers and growing like crazy, and not being having problems with a lot of diseases. So I'm really happy about that. So the first hydrangea we have here is the microphylla, the big leaf hydrangea. That is the most common one. I think that is kind of like the one hydrangea you really have to care less. That would be my tip about that hydrangea. You put it, and it usually doesn't need much care. So when people say to me, I don't want to be doing a lot of things in the garden, that hydrangea will be the one. The Hydrangea paniculata, the panicle hydrangea, it's called panicle hydrangea because it has that flower like a panicle. The only thing I see with that hydrangea that is a problem is that the flower sometimes is really big. Well, if the flower is really big, and sometimes the canes are not strong enough to hold the plant. So that is the only thing I see with that one. I will say most of the hydrangeas here, like this is the general, I would say, try to pick up a hydrangea that is gonna fit the space. It's really hard to have a hydrangea blooming and keep it small. And most of these hydrangeas here are like minimal 3 feet in height plus.
Hey, Elizabeth, we can't see the slide. Are you working off the presentation already, or are you just kind of infoing?
Yeah, I am. Oh, let me see what I'm doing wrong.
Okay, sorry, if you don't mind, just.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, you want to go to slideshow? There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So these are the hydrangeas. So the first one, the big leaf hydrangea, is the one that I was talking about. That is like everybody knows about it. Everybody has it. The one that is really tough. The panicle hydrangea is the one that I was mentioning. That the one problem I see with the panicle hydrangea is it grows really big, and sometimes the flowers are so heavy that they just look down or lay in the floor. So one of the things that I will suggest to people is, even though this panicle hydrangea will produce flower in the current year growth, so the you don't want to cut too hard. You want to try to generate a structure, and I'm going to show you what that means. But pretty much, if you don't cut so hard all the way to the ground for it to come back, that sometimes it helps the hydrangea to the canes to stand up straight. And the other thing, because when you have a cane that is there for 2 years or 3, the cane is getting thicker. So if the new growth come from that cane, so then that cane can be stronger. So that is one way. And the other thing I see is sometimes when they are having too much water, which maybe this is not the case at this time of the year for us, but sometimes when we had too much water in the plants, they had too much water inside the system, and that is when they bend really easily with any weight that is on them. The other hydrangea is the Hydrangea serrata, or mountain hydrangea. The hydrangea we don't see much here. It's usually more like in the east side of the US. The one thing I do have to say is that some of the big leaf hydrangeas have the same flower as the flower formation as the serrata, which is that lace cap flower. So the flower is not really going to help you much, but we don't usually have these serratas here in the West. The other one is the Hydrangea arborescens, or the smooth hydrangea. I will say that this, what I have seen is this hydrangea is the one that has the most problems with a full sun or like stuff like that. They do like to be in the shade. They like to be in full shade, part shade, or bright areas, but not full sun. The smooth hydrangea. That is kind of like my take in this. The Hydrangea quercifolia, it is a big hydrangea. So this is something that you want to put as a background. I mean, every leaf is as big as a page, you know, an office page, office size paper. So it is really important that you realize that when you are putting this, not only it generates a really nice statement with texture and the huge flower, but this is a plant that will grow really strong, and it's not an easy plant to keep small. Because what happens is they are really strong growers. So if you keep pruning, they keep growing as fast as you prune, and you end up cutting the flowers. The other thing is that I have seen is this hydrangea can take up to 3 years to get settled. So sometimes people say, well, this is not working, let's move it out. And I'm like, no, just wait that this hydrangea is gonna, as soon as it gets settled, it's gonna start growing. So it is really important that you give it that time. And this hydrangea tolerates full sun in really hot conditions perfectly. And the other thing about this hydrangea and the arborescens, that they are actually the two hydrangeas that are native from the US. And the quercifolia, the oak leaf hydrangea, is semi-deciduous. So this is the only hydrangea that if it's happy in the place and protected by, you know, like the fence and a tree on top or something, this hydrangea will not fully get dormant. So, and then the other hydrangea is the climbing hydrangea, the petiolaris. And that hydrangea, I have seen it more and more and more, and I actually like it. But there is another hydrangea that you don't want to keep small. I have my client, she put it in a little wall that was 3 feet high by 6, and she was keeping it, but it was not blooming because she kept cutting and cutting and cutting. And then she let it, one time she got sick and she couldn't that year go out in the garden, and it kind of like took over the whole garden. So it's a really strong grower. From the hydrangeas, I will say the ones that are more drought resistant, because we have to think about that, is the big leaf hydrangea. Is really drought resistant. The oak leaf hydrangea, I will not say like a cactus, but you know, a lot of my clients had to reduce water a lot, and they didn't show signs of drought. So I will say the microphylla and the quercifolia and the climbing hydrangea, 3 of them, I was amazed how little effect it has when my clients had to cut the water really strong. Now so again, for me to be able to show you how I do things, I do have to talk about what you see out there and what you hear out there. So the hydrangea groups that I have here are groups that are related with what you see a little bit when you are reading about it. So the hydrangea produce flowers in the old wood. So meaning that the flower is gonna overwinter. This is the first box. And we have the big leaf hydrangea, the mountain hydrangea, the oak leaf hydrangea, and the climbing hydrangea. And so usually people say you have to cut this right after they flower, which, you know, sometimes the flower stay there for a long time. And then the hydrangea that produce flowers in the new wood, which is the panicle hydrangea and the smooth hydrangea. So the one thing that is now getting a little bit confusing for people is that, you know, every year, every 2 years, or every 3 years, I don't know, there is a new series or collection. And this, which is really good for us because, you know, it's people that is changing and modifying a little bit the plant so they can do the things that we want. So in this, in the Hydrangea microphylla, they have 2 series that are they bloom in old and new wood. So that means no matter how you prune, they're gonna flower, and the flower lasts for a long time. So it's the endless summer, which I really like, and the less dance. I like the names too. So, and then the serrata, which we don't see that much here, but they have the tough stuff. And now, actually, this year I saw one that was tiny tough stuff, which it will grow like 3 feet tall. But in any case, the this is for you, like if you know what plant do you have, so then this is gonna guide you. However, but however, you know, I want to actually show you how to prune your hydrangeas without you even know what you have. So the first thing I want to clarify is how do you know when is the old wood or the new wood? So, and by the way, I have a video. So in the video, you're gonna see the third example of difference between old wood and new wood. So in this one, the old wood, it shows by being, I'm going both of them, by being like that beige color, like brownish color, and the new wood is the current year growth or the spring summer growth will be green. So you can see here the difference. So pretty much what we wanna express is the old wood is the last year growth. That is the old wood. In your hydrangea, you can have older wood, but the important thing that they are trying to explain to you about old wood and new wood is last year growth is going to produce flowers in some of them, and the current year growth, they're going to produce flowers in some of them. So that is all. And with that, you know, what they say to you is, well, the hydrangeas that produce flowers in the old wood, you want to just prune before fall, because in fall they produce the flower bud, quote unquote flower bud, and you just cut a little bit because you want some of that wood to stay there for next year, so next year you have flowers. In the other one that produce new wood, the old-fashioned thinking is that you cut it all the way to the ground, and so it will grow again. My approach, and the reason why I made this approach is because every time I went to my client's house to cut the flowers, they were like, oh, you know, this is the only color in the garden. I hate to cut the flowers so early. I know I can put it inside my house, but I want to see them in the garden, blah, 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 blah. So I realized, you know, if you don't know what hydrangea you have, or if you want to keep your flowers, you can do it. And this is the way you can do it. You can prune all hydrangeas in winter, because I want to explain that later. And everything I do is when they are fully dormant. That means when they are like fully naked. Of course, the oak leaf hydrangea, if it's happy and everything, it will not lose their leaves. Well, so then when it's really cold, And you know, December to February is cold, so you can do it anytime from that point. And then and the way that I base my pruning on is according with how big I want my hydrangea to be, because that is one of the problems with the old wood pruning hydrangea in the old fashion, is that the hydrangea keep growing and growing and growing, and you actually want your hydrangea to fit certain space. So and the other thing that makes me see how do I want to prune my hydrangea is the health of the plant. So sometimes my plant, you know, if I just, because I just planted some hydrangeas 2 months ago, I am not gonna do a really strong pruning, even though it's a paniculata. I am just gonna let it be there, let it get strong, and then do the pruning later on, because I just planted it. So I don't want to stress the plant. Now, the one thing I try to base my pruning is in the plant cycle, what Shannon was saying, like, let's make sense so we can remember. So when you look at the plant cycle, it's really easy to know when to prune. So the spring, the plant is growing. In summer, the plant is blooming. In fall, now they are some blooming, and they are producing the buds. So those are vegetative buds that had inside cells with the flower buds, but we call it flower buds because that is the way that they have said it before. So in any case, in fall, they produce the bud. The most important thing that the plant does in fall are those, well, actually the bud is also important, but the other important thing that people don't realize is that the hydrangeas in fall start doing the winter preparedness. And the winter preparedness is that they release some hormones so they don't freeze up. So why we don't have hydrangea serrata here that much? Because that hydrangea specializes in like really cold environments. So what happened is, you know, like in every, like us, like animals, I don't know, you guys have heard about like plants talking to each other. There is a lot of talk about that. And the funny thing is that it's not that they're talking with each other, but hormones are really important for everybody, for every living being. And now we're realizing that plants also develop, like work with a lot of hormones. You know, when you do the pruning, they release hormones, certain different hormones that supposedly protect the plant from insects to come in. When and at the tip, the hormone for the plant to grow taller, they are growing with a different hormone. The flower that is inside that vegetative bud that is producing fall, it open up by release another hormone. So there is a lot of hormones going on. In fall, they release a hormone, so they protect themselves for getting all frozen. So pretty much that the inside, the cambium that is inside doesn't freeze. So, and then the other important thing is that in fall, the plants are using, are putting energy, store energy in the root system. And for that, believe it or not, they are gonna need some leaves. So that is why I try to do the pruning later on, especially for like weak plants. And in winter, they are doing nothing. So that is why it's so good. I mean, they are not dead. I know they look kind of dead, but they are not. But they are not doing much. So a few things that I do say in winter is, if we have a dry winter, put a little bit of water on them, because it's gonna show. In fall, I say fertilize. This is the time to fertilize your hydrangeas to give a nice, strong blue or more flowers next year. So this is the time, like an important time to fertilize your hydrangeas. Then now the steps for pruning. So I am giving you these steps. Usually I go through these steps 1 and 2 and 3 times. And these steps is just a guidance. So don't get stuck in which one is which one really, but try to remember the 3 Ds and 3 Cs are just helpful guidance for you to understand. So because one of the things about hydrangeas is that they are really good plants to learn how to prune. And if you use this guidance to prune your hydrangeas, you're going to realize that you can use this guidance for every single plant. So I think that is my motivation for you to try to remember this. So the first thing I do is cut the 3 Ds. Really simple, self-explanatory. You are going to cut anything that is dead, anything that is diseased or damaged. So a plant that is kind of like broken, halfway rip off, just cut it. Especially with hydrangeas, they will produce new canes from the base of the plant. And that is a good way to renovate your plant. So cut any dead, disease, and damage. Now, the second thing I do, and why I put this one first, because it's just clear the plant out, clear all the debris out of the way. The second thing I do is remove the weak, spindly stems, and I cut them all the way to the base. So the thing with this number 2 that I get a lot of questions, what is weak spindly? Well, weak and spindly is something that is not growing straight up. That is weak and spindly. Weak and spindly is something that cannot hold the flower. That is weak and spindly. That weak and spindly will be something that is kind of like growing and leaning in the ground. Even if it's thick, it's anyway leaning in the ground. Well, we want to cut that. Sometimes when we plant, we have all the canes weak and spindly. So I will say, like in this case, do not cut them all the way to the ground all, but you are going to cut them to the second and third pair of buds. So in this case, this is a hydrangea that was planted last year, and it didn't receive that much water. It didn't do that great. It did flower, but it didn't hold the flowers for too long. And so what I am going to do is I'm going to cut all the growth, because all is spindly, all the way to the second or third pair of buds. So that means if this is, here is one set of buds, this is another set of buds, and this is a third set of buds. So I cut there. So I have the same thing here. 1, 2, and 3, I cut in the third one. Some of them, I cut them all the way to the ground, and some of them I cut it to the second one. And the reason why I'm gonna do that is if the plant has been there all year round and is still kind of like trying to make a strong stems, that means the plant is still not fully like settled. And so I don't want to do that in fall. I want to do that in winter when it's fully dormant. Why? Because I want the plant to have that energy stored in the root system. That is what makes winter pruning a good stimulating pruning for the plant. So what I am doing is I'm cutting those stems and I'm telling you, you need to grow stronger. So that is what they do. Now we're gonna look at the structure of the plant. So this is what I usually do. And I forgot to tell you, in California, which I hope everybody's in California, we do the pruning from December to February. So you can do it anytime. I particularly have some hydrangeas that they are really exposed to weather, and I see that sometimes they get frostbite, so I wait to February to prune them. But in general, I do my winter pruning in December, anytime in that period, December to February. So when we are looking at the structure, it is really important if you are gonna kind of follow my steps of pruning. So because that is gonna generate a stronger canes, that is gonna also help you to control your hydrangea, believe it or not. And it's gonna help you to understand what to cut and what you shouldn't. I thought about the 3 C's. It's not like my idea, but when people ask me, how do you know what to cut? I go to the 3 C's. So the first one is the structure. When I'm talking about a structure, even though I said it wrong, is this word structure is the main canes. So I try to generate like main canes. I try to generate that structure so I can come back and cut it. I can renovate the structure by cutting some of these old canes. And when you cut these canes that have been there for 5 years, you cut them, new really strong canes come from the base of the plant. So when you cut them all the way to the ground, new strong canes will come from the base of the plant. So in this case, for example, in my left side, hopefully everybody has this plant in the left side with the white fence, that is a big leaf hydrangea. And that, you know, when it's blooming, is 4 feet tall. This is a 3 feet fence, and I cut it all the way to 2 feet every year. And I still have growth coming, flowers coming, and I am able to control the height of the plant. So by generating the structure. So the structure is those main canes. This one is a Hydrangea paniculata. So the paniculata produce flowers in the current year growth. So, but people, this is a good example because they can tell you, you can generate a structure. And the reason why we want this one to have a structure is because this is a 6-foot fence, and my client wants this to be way higher than the fence, so nobody see in the house. So that's why it's kind of like crowded at the top and stuff like that. So I do my pruning according with the needs. So in this case, and this hydrangea will grow. So in this case, this, you can totally see the structure. The structure in the lower section is pretty open. And you know, these canes are really, really old. They must be like 6 years old. In here, I had a cane that I had to cut, and you can see this is last year growth. So when you do this structure, you can renovate these old canes, meaning sometimes you go all the way to the ground and cut them, and they produce really new canes. That is what helps you to do that flowering throughout the year. So now, we have, let me see. Yeah, so in the 3Ds, when you look at the structure, you have your 3 seeds, and that is what is gonna guide you. So the crossing, crowding, and competing. And this part gets a little confusing because people are like, okay, this one is crossing or this one is competing. It doesn't matter. If it's one of those, whatever you wanna call it, sometimes they are crossing and crowding the same branch, so that means you may want to cut it. So in this case, I am giving you examples that I try to color, that is going to help you. So for example, crossing will be the blue. So this one is coming from one side and is crossing the plant. That is ones that I usually always remove. Something that is growing from one side and then goes to the other side of the plant is going to crowd the plant. So it's crossing, I'm gonna cut it. This one is a really strong crossing in the upper section that I don't need, especially if I am trying to let the plant grow, because it's always gonna have issues being in the middle. So all the blue ones are crossing. It can be a small crossing, or it can be a big crossing. The crowding, well, you know, it's hard to tell you crowding in this because all look crowding, but you can see how crowded looks in this area. And I don't have no colors for crowding because I start coloring everything and I realize it's hard to tell you what is crowding. But in the video, I'm gonna show you a little bit of how I can define also crowding. And competing is something like this, or this one can be crowding too. Something that is going through the plant and getting all busy there. So those are the kind of like the things I will say. It can help you to identify things by saying crowding is not especially one branch, but it can help you identify, okay, this is a crowded area compared with this one that doesn't have that much. This is a crowded area. I need to select one to cut. And how do I select? Well, this one is going inwards and it's already broken here. So competing usually is kind of like, okay, you have 2 parallel branches here. So then these are gonna be producing shoots in this section. So maybe you wanna cut one. I will cut this one all the way here and leave it. So, and leave the other ones. This one is example of, the pink one is example of a branch that even though it's a really strong cane, is laying in the ground. So you don't want to have branches already laying in the ground, because you know that those branches are not going to be able to fall out of the flowers. So this one is the picture of the before and after of the paniculata that I was talking about. So now you can see that when they are flowering, they are above the fence. It's like 2 feet above the fence, which is what my client wants. And every year we clean some of the insides, we clean the ones that are laying down. I have here a little bit of the spindly that I didn't finish cleaning. You can see those 2 branches here. And in here I'm giving you, okay, this is the height I want. So part of the pruning that I was showing you is the short stems. So after I do the 3 C's, I back up, look at my plant. You don't have to, I will say, go one time, back up, and see what else you need to cut. You are not going to fix all the problems in one pruning. Sometimes you're going to leave stuff. And second, you are going to have to go around and around and around, doing the 2 and 3 and 4, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, removing little by little. And that gives you a more like general pruning situation. So then you have the shortening, and that's the last thing I do. So people like to do it before because it's easier. For me, it's kind of like easier at the end, because it let me see the plant already open, and I can tell how much I can shorten the plant. So I shorten the stems like according with, so you can cut it. So pretty much what it says there is cut to a pair of buds on an outward facing bud, or cut as far as you need to. So in my example there, I am cutting, in this one, I'm cutting right to the fence, and this is all last year growth. And it was way taller. So I cut like half of the last year growth. And the whole idea, for example, with the paniculata, if this is the only last year growth I have, if I leave 2 buds, I am gonna have flowers. If I cut all the last year growth, see, I go and cut it here, the only one that is gonna flower is this one that generated last year. So that is the one thing that you wanna do. So to generate the structure, usually when I get presented with hydrangeas, one of the things I get presented with is a lot of this. Hydrangea, they have never been pruned, that doesn't have a structure. Maybe that it was pruning the old-fashioned way, all the way to the ground and come back, and all the way to the ground and come back. So if I am gonna generate a structure, so I thin out some of the canes. So usually what I try to do, let's say in this case, let's say that the example is about a hydrangea that, you know, they planted, it has been 3 years, it's growing really messy. You can see really strong buds already in the hydrangea, and but a lot of leaning and a lot of crowdedness. So what I will do with this one is to make it look a little bit like the one in the right. That is, I remove half of the canes, so the hydrangea put the energy in growth and flowers. And so, and how I select my canes? Well, I start looking at this vase cane situation. So pretty much I wanna have an up and out branch as tall as I can, as straight as I can, going up and out. And that's kind of like the V-shape vase structure that I would like to have. So a lot of the times, even if the plant, if my clients say I want it to grow taller, I reduce it in height because that stimulates. So that's why winter pruning is so important for all those things. This one is the one, the don't. And this one is a plant that, you know, if you go and just cut everything and don't thin out, and the new, I mean, you can see the new growth there, the green one, and the brown growth there at all canes, new canes. And so what happened is this, in general, doesn't look good. it's hard to control in height. Sometimes the canes are just like, it's so crowded, you don't even know what is alive. You just start, visually it's not so pleasant. So I think that is more pleasant to have a more open and airy, where there is not insects and pests going through there, and then the plant will come out. And the more that you select a structure, and remember, even if I come and cut this cane in 2 years, 3 years, you're gonna have canes coming from the base of the plant. So you can always renovate, and that is what it helps for you to control the size of the plant, having a structure. Few plants from the plants that we mentioned at the beginning are really, they do way better with the structure, and that will be the oak leaf hydrangea. If you have a hydrangea that pretty much needs a structure, is the oak leaf hydrangea, just because the flowers and the leaves are so big. The structure really helps the hydrangea to produce a strong growth. So yeah, so that is a little bit the first size of the slide. We're gonna have some questions right now, and then I showed you the video. That is a little video. I did 4 videos, and this was the only one that came out right, but a little video on how to prune them. But I will say fall pruning is the important pruning. Even though we're doing the class right now in fall, I will say if you can wait to winter pruning when they are dormant, especially this year, is really important for the plants, because in general, trees in the forest, trees in our gardens, shrubs are showing stress. So if we give the plant the time to go and do their thing, put in the energy in the root system, get still energy from those leaves and everything, right now, it is really important for them to have that extra time. So I would say winter pruning this year is the best pruning you can have.
Okay, that is awesome advice. I'm trying to look at some of these questions. Some of them we've already answered. I know that this is kind of care and pruning. We have a few questions about fertilizing and transplanting, and when the best times of year are to do those kinds of things. Specifically with some of the pruning that you talked about, so often, we tell people, cut at an angle or cut flat here. Is there any specification really for hydrangeas? Does it just depend on whether there's a bud and what makes the most sense, depending on, every cut can't be the exact same for every branch, depending on if there's a bud. Obviously you don't really want to cut at an angle because you don't want to get too close. You want to have, plus how it's so hard to get those clippers sometimes, down there in between everything. And that picture that you showed where the even the old wood, had that little bud forming. So just the best way to prune and fertilizing, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people also that ask, forgive me, Elizabeth, about the difference between San Francisco and the East Bay, just because, we're 30 minutes away, but there's such a vast difference in climates. And as you're kind of talking through things, they have that kind of cool, moisture-based climate kind of year round. So their winter maybe is not as harsh as it is out here in the East Bay, where, it gets so ridiculously cold, and we didn't used to have quite as many nights of frost. It would be kind of here and there. And now you're like 2 weeks of frosty nights. So just to kind of add into your mental calculations, thinking about it in terms of the East Bay versus the city also.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying, you have to realize a little bit of your microclimate. And so, for example, that's why I say, some of my plants that I have that are exposed, some hydrangeas that are really exposed and they always get that frost. So what I do is I actually leave the flowers, the brown leaves, everything on the plant protected. if you get really cold weather, so leave everything, all the old stuff there. That will protect the plant. And then cut at the end of winter, like pretty much at the beginning of spring, when you are seeing those buds, like that picture that I show. Oh, that's what happens. That picture that I show in, it's not gonna, come on, baby. Well, there we go. That picture that I was showing in the, it's maybe that picture may be a little bit too late, but I will say something like that when you are seeing the buds opening up. Maybe it's a little bit too late, but it's still good enough to come and prune. I will say in general, even if you are in San Francisco, well, in general, I wait to, you can wait all the way to the end of February to do your pruning, or beginning of March to do your pruning, and that will stop the confusing with the microclimates. And this is what I meant with leaving the flowers, leaving everything so like that none of the cuts that you're doing are stimulating growth, stimulating dead, or areas that are open to have frostbite. So that is, I guess, the way I will approach microclimates. I will say, and timing. I will say the only way that you can know is just looking at your plan and seeing, okay, what has happened when I prune in winter, in December, and if I have a lot of dieback, so you know your plant is not liking too much December pruning, and you can move it all the way to beginning of March. So yeah. The other thing that you asked was fertilizers. I have here a list of fertilizers that I usually use that actually you can find at slots, any slots. Those are kind of like one of my favorites, just because one of the things I see with these fertilizers is you can put as much and you are not burning the plant. And the same thing with the, if you want to do the blue color, I have seen a lot of people kind of like putting too much acidity in the hydrangeas, and the hydrangeas not being able to flower much, or yeah. So because what happens is, if you, the acidity, when we say acid loving plants, the level of acidity is actually kind of minimal for what in the requirements of the plant. And sometimes people buy really synthetic fertilizers and put the synthetic fertilizer and end up throwing off the plant, the pH too much, and then the plant end up having issues with not only with the flower not producing the blue color, but with not producing flowers, or the leaves having these weird variations on the greens and the yellowing and stuff like that. And that is related with, you know, we change the pH too much. So these are my favorites, just because they're organic and they will not burn the soil. And usually what I do is I will say you can fertilize from now on all the way to this March. And the reason why I say now on is because even though now the plants are not gonna show that you add fertilizer, they are putting that energy in the root system. So it's gonna help for next year. The reason why I say from now on to March is because, you know, right now, when you fertilize with these fertilizers, they are all dry fertilizers. So if you are not allowed to put water in your garden and stuff like that, because when you put these dry fertilizers, what you want to do is put water, add the fertilizer, and put water again. So one of the things that I had a lot of people asking me is come in and see the plant and should I fertilize? And my answer this year is if you are not putting water in your plant, fertilizer can burn the plant. And that, you know, we have to be mindful of that. So with these dry fertilizers, if you say, well, you know what, I don't want to put fertilizer right now because I cannot water. So do it in winter. In winter, the plant is still taking some of those fertilizers down. So you can put fertilizer in winter, and the only thing is if you have like a lot of runoff, so then you are losing a lot of your fertilizer. So that is the tricky part. And also, how often do you have fertilize? It totally depends on which fertilizer you use, because some of them, they say, you know, fertilize every 2 weeks, fertilize once a month, and that totally depends. And also, you know, if your hydrangea, which is one of my clients, just say, okay, what do I need to do with the plants? And she laughs when she hears my answer. I say nothing. She's like, should I fertilize? I'm like, no. And she's like, why you don't want to do anything? I'm like, your plants are growing strong, are flowering beautiful, are holding the leaves for a long time. They are all nice green color. You don't need to fertilize. You don't need to do anything with your plant. Your plant is happy. Is receiving everything it needs. So that is my philosophy. If your plant is not showing it, maybe you don't need to do anything. And for the cutting, so for the cutting, let's do this. Let's show the video, because in the video I show you what I mean with, I show you how to cut. Well, not how to cut, but it really shows. I have a close-up of that. So okay. Let's do the video, and then if that doesn't get answered, you guys will tell me, and I have few little branches here that I can show you where to cut.
That's perfect.
Perfect. So should I show the video now?
Yeah, now's good.
Perfect. In this video, we are going to show a hydrangea that was planted at the beginning of this year. First, we're going to assess the hydrangea health, and then we're going to do the pruning accordingly. So to assess the hydrangea health, the first thing is if it flowers. Yes, it did flower. We have 2 dead flowers here and flower before here, so it flowered. The second thing is assessing the strength of the canes, how thick they are. So in here, we can see the canes are pretty close to being a pencil thick, the main canes. You do have smaller canes, but in general, we have surrounding with pretty thick canes, strong, well developed. The third thing that we can look is at the buds. Right now in fall, the hydrangea should be developing the buds that are gonna overwinter. So we can look at the buds here, and here. They're really strong and fat. So we like those buds. We don't have many, but we have some. They are starting to come out. So this hydrangea, I will say, in my professional opinion, that this hydrangea is strong. So we can go with a nice pruning. The first thing that we're gonna do with the pruning is we're gonna do our 3 Ds: dead, disease, and damage. So in this case, we are gonna do, these ones are dead. How do you know if they are dead? When you peel them, they are brown. So they are dead. So we're gonna cut all the dead as far as we can. We're gonna remove all the soil and the debris from the center. This is a hillside, so most of the time, debris piles up in the center, which is okay. I'm gonna cut more of the dead. I am going as far as I can. Anything that is dead, broken, I'm cutting. And this. So now we're gonna go with looking at the structure of the plant. The structure are the main canes. So in this case,
this one, this one, this one are my main canes. I have 3 main canes, and I have last year growth, which will be the brown, the dark browns. Those are last year growth. So from the structure, I want to generate a cup-shaped structure. So something that is coming up and out. So in this case, some of the old canes may go. So this one that is going inwards and outwards, crossing the plant, is gonna go. I can cut it to 2 buds, or I can go all the way out. The same thing with this one. Oh, yeah. The same thing with this one. This one is coming in and then going out. I can cut it I can remove it, fully remove it. Now, and the same thing with this one. This one is showing you the best example of parallel branches. So in this case, this branch is parallel with this one, which is competing. So that is our 3 Cs. This is going inwards. So even though this was in last year growth, I'm gonna cut it. So give it a space to the branches and the new growth. Then we're gonna have the competing. These 2 parallel branches are gonna end up competing. So I could reduce this one. So this will develop this way and leave that one there. Crowding, this doesn't have a lot of the crowding, so I will explain the crowding in the other video. So right now, I want to reduce it in the height because I also want to give some strength. So when we do this pruning, this winter pruning, we are stimulating a little bit more of the growth. So I'm gonna go with buds that are going out. This bud that is going out. This bud that is branch that is going out. I'm gonna cut this one there, this one here. Actually, I'm gonna cut this one here too. So here too. It's going out, and that will be the pruning for this year of this hydrangea. This is the close-up of what I mean with going to an outward bud. So this one is going out, this one is going out, this one is saving the 2 buds, and this one is going out. The bud that I'm selecting to cut to is going outwards.
Okay, so that is the video. I think that that talks a little bit about like how close to the bud to get, which buds do we want to select to cut to. And you know, in some cases I select the buds that this hydrangea had were really thick.
Yeah.
I had the other hydrangea that we had there. Actually, I have some branches here from all the videos that I did. This one, for example, this doesn't have even like, this is, I don't know if you can see, but yeah, this is the buds that they have. So they are really, really small. And the cane size is also really, really small.
Right.
So you in this, well, I don't know if my hand did help for the,
right.
So with those canes, those are the canes that, or I will remove, like pretty much cut all the way to the base, or have, if the whole plant looks like that, so then I go to the second or third bud counting from the base up. And so that is how I go. But if you don't know where to cut, like how close to cut to the bud, you can just go like as close as here. If you don't know, so then in this case you can go a little bit higher. This part will die, and then you can do a little cleanup.
Right, do a secondary cut. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then you had mentioned during, I think there's a little bit of confusion about cutting the old wood, but yet making sure that it either, that any new budding that's on there, you know, not wanting to cut off that budding. Like if it's old wood, are you just looking for new buds? And so if you have new buds, then obviously you're going to cut above that. But if you don't have any new buds on there, then you can cut a little bit lower the way that you would normally.
Okay, so yeah, that's a really good question. So the one thing is, because in the other video, I haven't talked about it, but the video was really noisy because I live close to the freeway. So the thing is, the buds that the vegetative buds that come out in this video that I show you are gonna overwinter, but some of them are still dormant and they are there. You just don't see them. So what happened is that's why I kind of wait until the end of winter to do my pruning, because I let the plant still grow those buds. So I did that pruning right now in fall because I wanted to have a video for you guys.
Okay.
But if I think that if I had waited, a lot of more buds will have come out because they were dormant.
So, I mean, then how do you know then when to cut? If you do it during the time frame, yeah, I guess there's no perfect.
No, that is why I'm giving you that's why I'm giving you that thing about,
Right.
cutting winter.
Yeah.
Wait until the end, because even if they say, that's one of the things that my clients always be like, we're cutting now. The buds are not there, or the buds are there. I'm like, the buds form and they stay there. The buds doesn't form and they are dormant.
Got it.
There is no reason to cut your flowers in fall.
Right.
Let them be there as much as you like. Some people like the dry ones. I have few dry over here. I like them too.
Yeah.
So, we cannot dominate that.
Understood.
We adjust to the situation and we hope.
And some of it is preference, right? Like you just said, some of them you kind of like to see a little bit on the drier side. So let's say that you wait until winter, or you wait till the end of winter even, and you do some trimming, and then so you skip one that's got some buds on it and it blooms and it's gorgeous, and then by March, April it's looking kind of ratty and there's no new blooms. Can we cut that back then, just like that branch that we had waited on that had the new bloom? And even though now everything else is like starting to do their thing, but that one had been an early bloom, it's bloomed, it needs to be deadheaded anyway. Can we cut them back singly, over the season? Or does it make sense to just don't touch it again until winter?
No, yes, especially like right now, that's why he kind of like gets confused, because right now with the endless or let's dance, the endless summer and let's dance, those you don't want to leave the ones that are looking kind of dead there. So you do a little bit of deadheading. So you can cut to. So let's say that this is the hydrangea. So then you can go say, okay, this is my flower. And you can go 1, 2, and cut to the second bud. So instead of going like when I say cut the straggly to the second pair of buds, I start from the base. When you are doing heading, it's backwards.
Yeah.
You say, okay, I can go 1, 2, or 3, or 1, 2, and cut here.
Got it.
I can hit a little bit.
Right.
And the whole branch is just kind of like in the way, or yes, you can go farther. The farther that you go, the more stimuli you are giving to the plant, and then it's gonna grow. And the good thing about pruning at that time, so in that case, what happened? In that case, I have still part of that current year growth.
Right.
Isn't it? So I have 1, 2 buds for that current year growth.
Right.
Here in my stem. So what happened is that is gonna grow because you cut it right at March, isn't it?
Okay.
So that is gonna grow, or whatever grows that develop. So that is gonna put buds too. So in the case of this one growing, so this one is gonna grow here. This bud here is also gonna produce flowers.
Right.
So yes, when you deadhead, you can actually deadhead a little bit lower, and you are stimulating your plant to growth, and that growth on that, let's say that we had this year, 2000 year growth, is gonna produce flower next year, and that is what they mean with the old growth, the old growth.
Yeah.
So yes, when you deadhead, you can stimulate your plant. You don't want to cut half of the plant when you are deadheading, because what happens is then you can stress your plant, and the plant is going to be like, oh my God, I need to grow. So I'm going to drop the other flowers as soon as I can, dry out. And so you kind of want it to go 1, 2 buds.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we've had a couple different, you showed that one branch where the leaves had maybe a little bit of burning on them. The one that you were just showing, is
Oh,
it,
yes.
I mean, does it, yeah. So does it make sense to try to prune all of that, or is that just kind of the price of living in the Bay Area and don't worry about it?
I will say that is again kind of preference.
Sure.
These ones are like that because
Right.
my plants, we had a problem with irrigation. I can't
Okay.
fix irrigation because I live in a condo. So the water was spilling out somewhere. It took like 3 months for them to
Right.
fix it. So this was like a brown that they had because they had lack of water, like
Yeah.
in the middle of the summer. or
Okay, fair enough.
So the thing is there a preference? Do I mind to see that? I
Right.
don't mind it. But
Yeah.
if half of my plants are not how you can see the plant in the video that was in my house too.
Yeah.
And they're all rescue too.
Yeah.
So they are not plants that have been really, really happy.
Right.
That is what it tells me. These plants can survive.
Yeah.
So what happens is if all my leaves are looking like that and I go
Yeah.
and remove them because I don't like the look, this is still photosynthesized.
Right.
So I am actually weakening my plant when I am removing all.
When you're
If
taking,
I see like I am removing 10% of the leaves, it's fine.
yeah,
But if all my leaves are like that and I'm removing all of them, I am gonna stress the plant.
understood. Okay. All right, that makes sense. And then in terms of transplanting, does it make sense to do it, like during dormancy? Or is there a better time of year that is, time for, whether you're taking it out of the ground and putting it in a pot or vice versa, which I feel like it tends to be more of the possibility, is taking it out of a pot, deciding, okay, this thing has outgrown its home. It's been here for too long. Now I want to put it in the ground. It's significant enough and it's established enough. Is there a best time of year? Is it just during dormancy?
Well, so putting it out of the pot and putting it in the ground, I will say anytime. I'm gonna give you that anytime.
Yeah.
However, the best time for that situation will be like if you are having problems adding water to it and stuff like that, it will be now. Because what happens now, the plant is gonna have rain coming.
Right.
In. So what I did is I planted some hydrangeas. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plant them wait 1 month or 2 and then fertilize, because I want to fertilize those after a little bit so they get strong.
Right.
And I may not prune those actually.
Right.
This is the one time I said, let's see what the plant does.
Sure.
And it helps the plant get strong. And but I will say if you are putting it from a pot, especially like the ones that you buy at the nursery,
right,
pot to the ground anytime. You don't do it if it's too hot, like we're talking about microclimates, like if we're talking about putting an oak leaf hydrangea that I bought here in Mill Valley, and I'm gonna go and plant it over there in Walnut Creek in summer, may not be a great idea to do it in summer because the plant is gonna get choked no matter what.
And that's a really good point too. We talk so often about, buying plants close to where you live. Like neighborhood gardening is such a big deal because those plants are already acclimated to wherever it is that you live, so you're not having to temper them going from one climate to the other. It makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, sometimes you can't find them and it's okay. So usually what I say to my clients is like, okay, I buy all the plants. So I bought a bunch of plants. I go and take them. Let's say that I bought them in sometimes even farther than Mill Valley. I go and take them to Walnut Creek and I put them in like a shade area and I leave them there for a month. So they are kind of like getting used to. You can do that too.
Absolutely.
Now, when we are talking about transplanting is a different animal, because I would say transplanting, you are gonna be cutting all these root systems out of the soil and moving it, and that is harder for the plant. So transplanting is the one thing that you want to do when it's fully dormant.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. That makes sense.
And when you do transplanting, I will say maybe even adding a little bit of mulch. Like you remember in the video, I said remove all this.
Right.
Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you actually want to put some mulch around.
Yeah.
Because the mulch helps for the soil not to get too cold.
Right.
So protects the root system from getting cold.
Yeah.
And that center of the base of the plant, I actually, when I am transplanting, I actually
bring it right up to the root. Okay, so that's a good point then, because normally we tell people to leave a little bit of, like a reverse turtleneck, leave a little bit of space around just so the roots, the base doesn't get strangled. But in this case, she's saying, when you're transplanting during cold weather, to go ahead and bring that mulch right up to the, to the base so that it can, help it to keep warm and help to keep any moisture and stuff in there during the winter. That's awesome. And then what about any, like any disease? I know sometimes hydrangeas can get like that rust and, some other issues on their leaves. Is there anything in particular that you can think of disease wise that, we can kind of work against?
Yeah, I will say so this year we are seeing a lot of little like rust and pests, thrips and all that stuff. That is gonna be kind of like the way that is like I'm seeing mildews and all that. Thrips and mildews are being like everywhere. So I will say that is part of our full year care in the sense of our plants are stressed. They are going to be a little bit more stressed this year. The pests are going to be a little bit more settled down because it's just what is happening. The more stressed the plant is, the easier for them to settle down for some reason. So one of the things that I will say is I will do, like, for example, if you have mildew, treat the mildew now before they put the leaves out. Treat the mildew out and then do another spray for the mildew when they are fully naked. So you actually kind of like control that.
Do you recommend like the horticultural spray during dormancy like we do for a lot of other things? Okay, good. So that's another really good one, and it's just about that time of year when things go fully dormant to use that horticultural spray. It's a big ticket item because it gives so much protection, over the winter. And not only does it protect, but it also helps to strengthen them so that during the coming year and seasons that they're able to better combat, those kinds of diseases and, afflictions that could come on by pests or just climate stuff. So, don't forget to dormant spray, anything that you've got like that is, just to protect it and give it a better, kind of a one up, a leg up for the coming season. That's a great point.
Yeah. And the other thing is also don't forget about the mechanical the mechanical things that we can do. Like if you have mildew, remember just this year to get a good cleanup of those leaves. Maybe don't compost those leaves this year. Remove them and put mulch. Like stuff like that, because it is being like really something that a lot of people ask me, or if your hydrangeas are like mine, losing their leaves already, they are looking like they are already winter. The one in the picture looked like it was already winter. So that is when I go and say, okay, let's put some fertilizer. I'm going to add more mulch. I'm going to give it like right now. It's a good time to give it a little push. Even though you will not see it this year, you will see it next year.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else that we missed that you can think of that you want to add in, Elizabeth? I feel like we've answered 19 million questions.
So I think that we did good.
Okay, good. Yeah. You guys
clean your tools, clean your tools.
Yes.
Also, don't forget in anything that you are doing right now, especially if you see that your trees are not doing good or your plants are not doing good, just clean your tools between plants, because again, I did had a lot of people, and don't get stressed about your plant going dormant faster.
Right.
That is your tip that I'm giving to everybody.
Yeah.
Don't get stressed. You know, I had a lot of people calling me this fall because they were doing this summer, because they were doing in summer what they're supposed to do in fall. So they were like, at the end, I was kind of like just answering emails. I'm like, no, I don't need to go there. I know what is happening.
Right.
So don't worry. If your hydrangeas or any plant goes to fall color earlier,
Right.
or drops their leaf earlier,
Yeah.
or drops the flower earlier, or wake up early.
Right.
So you just have a note in your mind. Your plant is getting a little stress and is showing it.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of TLC with fertilization, watering, anything that you can do would be good.
For sure. I mean, and those are really good points for no matter what. For cleaning tools, and especially as we're coming up on like the dormant time of year and the time of year where it's so so many plants would prefer to be, you know, pruned back at this time of year. So we sell, and you can get it pretty much anywhere, but like just regular old isopropyl alcohol are the best cleaners for any of your tools. So like Elizabeth mentioned, make sure you do it before you clean anything, period, especially if, you know, your tools have kind of been sitting around for the last couple months since you haven't been doing a lot of pruning during the endless summer that we're having here. But also in between any kind of plants that you're pruning, just so that you're not transferring any cooties from one to the other, you know, just getting, you know, a paper towel or a rag or something like that, making sure that you've got either a spray bottle with that alcohol in it, or like, again, we've got jugs at all of the slope locations that you can buy, just so you can kind of hit everything at once. And it doesn't have to be this scouring. You just want to wipe it down, clean it off, make sure that you're, again, not taking anything from one plant to another. So that's a great tip. All of the stuff I feel like that Elizabeth has talked about here that we've kind of gone over is true for so many different, you know, so many different plants. We're specifically talking about hydrangea, but you know, the cleaning your tools, the overwintering, you know, dormant and horticultural spray, like all of those are so simple and so kind of across the board. You can use them for so many different plants as you're getting ready to, you know, for your plants to go to sleep. Again, assuming that it gets as cold as it should this year. It's good for everything, not just hydrangeas. Yeah. So Elizabeth's, her email address, actually her website, because her website has everything. So I'll just refer you to that, but it's gowithnature.net. And it is Elizabeth Ruiz, Ruiz. Again, she is our, you know, resident expert on all things pruning and care, and especially, you know, again, we talked so much about not only is it pruning for health, but also pruning for aesthetics, which is a big one for Elizabeth. She's very wary and very, you know, kind of on the front end of how she's looking at things and how they're going to grow beautifully, and how, you know, the health of the pruning will also kind of, it will dictate the health of the plant overall. The 3 Ds and the 3 Cs, I have that like in my notebook that I keep with me all the time because they're so important, you know, just to keep track of as you're working through your own garden, whether that's hydrangeas or anything else. I want to make sure I hit any last questions.
And we're gonna have like another pruning for fall.
Yes.
Like we need a pruning for fall.
Yes. As I mentioned, there's, you know, several different presentations coming up in webinars, and Elizabeth specifically will be doing one for fall pruning, which is huge, and it'll kind of cover everything. That pruning tool that you were using, was that one of the Felcos?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so again, which we sell at all of the different locations. They come in different sizes, and the size is really just based on the thickness of the branch that it will cut. So there's some that are 1/4 inch, there's some that are 1/2 inch, there's some that are more. And again, that's based on the thickness of whatever the branch is that you're trying to cut. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're.
However, like when you are buying a tool, you want to be able to put your tool, like I get the smallest one, because you don't want a tool that you want a tool that when you open the tool,
right,
in your hand,
stretching your hands.
so it's not bigger, Because
Yeah.
what happened, I mean, it could be bigger and it will cut bigger thing, but
Right.
then if you are doing that often, like for
Yeah.
me that I work every day, I need something that is ergonomically okay. So
For
I
sure.
don't get carpal tunnel or anything. So
Yeah.
if you have issues with your hand, that will be the size. The size you select is the one that fits between your thumb and here. It will
Right.
fit so you can close it easily.
For sure. Yeah. And then the dormant spray that we talked about, again, Sloat carries a couple of different types, but we normally use the Bonide, the horticultural, and oil and dormant spray. It's kind of all one combo piece. But there's lots of different possibilities. That's just the one that we recommend, I would say, the most often. If you have any questions that we weren't able to get for sure, go to Elizabeth's website. You can email her there. You can email us at Sloat Gardens. We have like a garden guru question area within our website where you can specifically ask, not just questions about hydrangeas and tools and overwintering, but pretty much anything. You can reach me at the Danville Sloat store, which is Sloat 7. So it's Sloat and then the word 7 and then the number 7. So sloat77@gmail.com. And all of our stores have that same, generic kind of email address depending on what store number it is. So definitely find out from your local store what their store number is. You can email us questions anytime. Again, gowithnature.net with Elizabeth Ruiz. I think we've gone a little bit over, so I don't want to keep you guys any longer. Any last thoughts, Elizabeth? Are we good?
No, we're good. We're good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you guys so much. We're looking forward to seeing you for all of our upcoming presentations and webinars. Again, I think it's, of course, now I'm not looking at my phone, but the next upcoming webinar is going to be on indoor plants and just house plants and how to, clean the indoor air with plants and how to take care of them over winter. We're really looking forward to seeing you guys all then. Thank you again for everything, all your questions and all of your patience with us. Good luck with your hydrangeas and pruning. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, you too.